Ronald Kinsella is an artist and an author. He's written numerous books, including science fiction for the mainstream media, some of which are illustrated by him. He also jointly hosts a paranormal radio show called Twin Souls, along with his identical twin brother, and is part of a global network. He's also appeared on national television, and he joins us. Hi, Ronald, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Dean.
Ronald, we'll talk about the science fiction aspect shortly, but you've recently collaborated on a new book with Philip Mantle, geared at the younger audience, and you've provided the illustrations for the book, introducing UFOs. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, Philip, as he's a leading ufologist, he approached me. He'd seen some of my art. I've known Philip for quite a number of years now. I met him at a conference we went to last year, the Outer Limits conference, which Chris Evers arranged. And I met him for the first time there, although I had been in contact with Philip. He came up with this idea for an illustrated book for the younger audience, based on classic UFO cases. And I thought, when he first asked me, I thought, well, I'm very honored he likes the art, but I wasn't sure which way it was going to go with it. But Philip was very insistent on having it done in a certain style, so being geared for the younger audience. So he covers, because the book is his brainchild, and it's been an absolutely wonderful collaboration with him, because he included cases of Betty and Barney Hill, the Roswell, as most of us know about, and cases like that. So he approached me to come out with these illustrations, and I just got to work on them, and came up with about I think 8 or 9, I can't remember. But he was very particular. There's one thing about Philip Mantle which I love. He's very particular. He knows what he's looking for. And what's interesting, when you collaborate on a project, one thing I must understand and learn is that what you necessarily think is ideal is not what they feel is ideal. Mm-hmm. And I had this with a number of illustrations. He said, no, we need it different, so I changed them. So yes, it's been a wonderful collaboration and a good idea of his.
Well, I'm going to talk to Philip about the book shortly, so people watching today can look out for that and find out more about introducing UFOs, but more about you. And the first question, we spoke off air, but are you an experiencer yourself?
Yes. It happened, an incident happened to me in 1982 when I was 13. It was very strange. It was real. And it was unforgettable. I mean, I call them, as we have spoke to earlier to you, Dean, about them being referred to as the doctors. They were an authority that were in charge, and they were insistent on doing a small procedure. It wasn't anything embarrassing. They were insistent on doing this, and they told me it was for my own good. I knew they were strange because of what they were wearing. They were wearing like armor or body suits, and their faces were covered. Now, back in 1982, then I was ignorant more or less of the UFO phenomena. I had heard of flying saucers, but I wasn't really interested in them. And of course, when this happened and they left me, they made a promise, whether they lied or not, I don't know, about this procedure. It's strange because it was to do with the head. They needed to do something to my head. Mm-hmm. And it's as if when I woke up, I wasn't asleep. I was just transported into this wheelchair, this modern looking wheelchair, extremely different from what we have. But I was paralyzed to a degree, only to a degree. I could move, only that movement like that. But I call them doctors because I think they were all white and sterile. I can't be sure, I can't remember, and I'll be honest, what the color of them was, but it certainly was sterile. And as I said, they were very nice. They weren't nasty, but they were very forceful. People keep asking me, even today, were they the Greys? No, I don't know. I can't say what they were. They wore masks. Mm-hmm. And I have illustrated them, and the goodbye present they presented me in the form of a mirage or an image, a hologram, I would imagine it was. In a new book I'm having released early next year, I think. So it was very bizarre. So in question to that, Dean, yes, I have seen them. And it was only once, the snatching. I don't like the word abduction. I don't like it. It sounds, to me, personally, it's only my geeky, but it was
Hmm.
a snatching and I haven't seen them, thankfully, again. I've never seen them again.
Can you remember? I mean, how did they show up? Did they just show up? You know, obviously uninvited, but was it in your bedroom, or was it outside, or was it in a room in the house?
I was taken from the bed, just shot right up into this thing. I don't know
Wow.
what it was. It was dark in the sky. This thing, I can't, it was just dark. There was something there. And I was immediately in this chair. Um, and they were around me. The one in charge was behind me. I could not see him. He made it quite clear I couldn't see him. I saw his hands. I never counted his fingers, unfortunately. He was wearing gloves, but there were three ahead of him in a type of operating theatre. It was sterile. I can't say it was an operating theatre. That sounds corny, but it
Hmm.
was their version of a room. I knew what was this side, but I don't know what was this side. So I've reflected again and again, and you know, this is the thing, Dean, that amazes me when people say, well, you colour it or you add emphasis to it. That's one thing I pride myself on. I have never done that, never, because I'm curious to know what they were. I knew they were strange because of what they were wearing.
How tall were they?
That's also a different question. I think they were taller than us. Well, I'm 13 and I was quite tall for a 13-year-old, but the three standing back, they didn't talk at all. They never talked, they never spoke. They were just standing there. I would say they were perhaps a bit taller than a man.
Wow. Um, you're part of a twin set. Your brother Philip, and you were twin brothers. Was he in the
Mhm.
room at the time?
Back then we shared a room. We lived in a Victorian house then in Luton, and the houses were quite big. The rooms were quite spacious, so we shared a room. But no, nothing. No, he wasn't there. Didn't even stir or wake. The incident afterwards, what it did cause me to do was to prop books up against the door and an old guitar. I was terrified of the dark.
Hmm.
Although ironically they didn't come through the door, I was just frightened of the dark, and I used to prop books up against the door so they'd make a sound. I used to stick books up my back. Why, I don't know. It was as if to protect me from being stabbed. It screwed me up,
Yeah.
and it screwed me up. But it took a long time to decipher what happened to a degree. Now, when they performed this alleged surgery on my head or something, the doctor, the chief one, was telling me it had to be done. I remembered exactly what he said. We're not going to harm you. I won't relay exact dialogue, but they had to do this thing on my head. And it's funny, you know, because after that, I've never had a fit before, and I never had one since. But at school, I was at school, and of course, I wouldn't tell anyone about this incident. I told Philip, my brother, I had a massive fit. Now, they asked me after that, I collapsed, I was fitting on the floor, and they pulled me out of school and asked if I had had breakfast, which I thought was ridiculous. A boy who doesn't have breakfast doesn't fit, I wouldn't imagine.
Hmm.
Um, and they asked to go and see a doctor, and I was terrified. I said, no, no. But I had a banging headache after that, but mercifully it cleared up. Nothing more happened. But that was after the incident. I had a fit.
Wow. Do you ever wonder why they took you and not your brother?
I have I have thought about it. Phillips had an experience later on, not with them, with something different. And now I did wonder whether it's because we're twins and whether they perhaps were interested in clones. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it did pass my mind whether they were curious at the fact that, you know, we're one of the same. I know not every twin is exactly identical. There must
Hmm.
be some changed or difference in the DNA. There probably is, but that did cross my mind. But he had one a bit more negative than me. As I said, I've never seen the doctors again, thankfully.
So, when you say it messed you up, in what way? I mean, was this in later years? Did you have
Yes,
trouble coming to
yes.
terms with what happened?
Yes, it was the paranoia of the dark. It was you know, I didn't know what they were. At the time, I didn't know what the greys were. I've never heard of the Greys afterwards. I didn't hear of the Greys, didn't know of them. I just used to make fun out of when they used to mention flying saucers. I wasn't even interested, just think it was a load of rubbish. But these were damaging in what they had left me. The hologram afterwards, you see, it took me years to put this all together, to patch out what they were doing and why they did it. And what they left me was clearly, absolutely, to try and make me forget, or to confirm to a psychologist that I've been down the rabbit hole. It's very clever. So, but my question was this: I can't understand it. When I read of people who have cases such as these, that why the aliens can't just knock you out if they're so advanced, or whatever they are. I'm not saying the doctors were aliens. I don't know what they were. I can't state that for sure, but they were different. They weren't like us. Why they can't knock you out? It's as if you're meant to see them, or I can't believe their method of amnesia is so feeble. You know, why do you see them? If they had taken me up and did what they needed to do and put me back, there would have been no problem. I would have never have known. But it's as if, and this is what I wrestle with in the recent work coming up, is why? Because if they're so advanced, of course they can knock out. We can do it with our patients.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my theory is that they want you to speak about it. Maybe it's part of the whole disclosure plan that
Yes.
That it's their way of doing it one person at a time, you know. And but it's quite interesting speaking to you know, many, you know, CE5 experiences, and they'll talk about this as, you know, it's a way. I just don't think a UFO is going to land on the White House lawns and just announce itself. I think it's being done this way, but it's quite interesting. So as a child, and I'd imagine it would have been difficult to talk about it, because it would have probably made you an outcast among your friends and at school. And I often wonder, even going back to when I was at school, there were some kids there that just seemed an outcast. There was nothing wrong with them, but they just seemed an outcast. They couldn't fit in, and you always wondered whether they had issues at home. But since I've been covering this topic and the number of children that have experiences, I'm wondering whether some of these kids may have had experiences and just couldn't talk about it.
Yes, I mean, I mean, this is the nasty thing about it is that as I got in school, I used to love painting. I loved art. So you're artistic, you're imaginative. I think you know where this is going. So to add insult to injury, coming up with fictional things didn't do me any good. It wouldn't have done me any good. And I will absolutely vouch on oath, I never told anyone about the doctors or their parting gift, only to Philip. And it was as if it was very strange. It was as if it happened, and it was horrific. For me, they weren't nasty. As I said, they weren't horrible. They were just an authority, and they were going to do what they were going to do. Nothing could stop it. Nothing. As a matter of fact, I actually wept in their presence when they announced the operation. I actually wept. They were very kind. But so this, I think there was a little bit of damage, but mercifully, it's as if it was, I pushed it to the back of my mind. I pushed it as, I mean, you're a kid, you know, you want to play, you want to explore, you know, you want to have adventures. So this, and of course it was so damn strange. I mean, I couldn't tell anyone. You couldn't tell your teachers. You couldn't tell anyone about it. They would think you're absolutely nuts. But it's good. I think the good thing about the passage of time now, the wonderful thing about our age is people are a lot more open-minded, and they're a lot more inquisitive, you know. I mean, if a psychiatrist turned around and to me and we went back and they said that this was just based on something or something, I would accept it. I don't wish for them to be spacemen or interdimensional creatures or, you know, but it was real. And, you know, this is the thing about experiences afterwards, it's, you can't, there's no way of measuring it. There's no way of verifying it, and that's the nasty thing about it. There is absolutely no way to prove their existence. And as you said, Dean, yourself, it's perhaps exactly what they want. And it was an interesting point you made when you said they want people to know about them, but they do it subtly.
Many experiences will often say, you know, even though the experience that they had was uncomfortable and literally shocked them. A lot of them tend to grow fond of these aliens and look forward to the next encounter. I mean, did you ever feel that, or you were happy to see the back of them?
No, I was terrified of them, even though there was, I mean, if they were polite, imagine if they were nasty. I was absolutely horrified of them. I don't want to see them again. I mean, but one thing that interests me about them, and this is on reflection now, and as I said, Dean, I've never colored it. I will not do it. I consider that an insult for anyone that will damage the memory. But one thing that interested me in 1982, as you know yourself, holographic projections were absolutely rubbish. We had 3D glasses for Jaws 3, I think it was, and they were terrible. No disrespect for Jaws, bless him. I mean, I thought they were wonderful.
Jaws 3 itself was a terrible movie, but
yeah. But the glasses, one of the 3D ones. So our technology back then was still in its infancy. They were amazing because they were bringing out the first home computers like the ZX81, the Sinclair, the BBC Micros. But this technology they used to project this hologram, I know what they did. They tried to make that look real, as if I was seeing something realistic. But it wasn't, because afterwards, it was only many years later, I realized it was hologram. It was a hologram. It was the bending of light and holding of light, which was incredible. What they projected was so real. It was a piece of technology. Now that interested me because that confirmed that they were advanced, that we could not possess this kind of technology to bend and hold light in the manner they did with what they left me as a parting gift. And I've had some people in relation to this, you then open up a can of worms, because some people will state that they're demons, some people will state that it's fictional, some people state they're outer space or interdimensional. We're left with a whole pigeonholed of possibilities. As I said, I don't know what they were, but certainly that betrayed their technology. And I think what that hologram was their undoing. Ironically, that was their undoing, because it was that very horrific thing they showed me that scarred me, but not only scarred me, it pushed me to remember them.
Right. Did you ever see whether you had anything implanted inside your head, or?
No. I mean, no, I couldn't. I was terrified of doctors, and people say that's a cop-out. But you're 13. You know, when I had the fit, I was horrified to go and see doctors. Horrified after that. But after the fit, which lasted about 2 minutes, I'll tell you what it was. It was 4 striking pains in my head, at the brain, at the back. They were physical. Absolutely. I've never had. It's like a bubble, but like a knife in a bubble. And it was strike, and the last one, I actually fell onto the pupil and then collapsed on the floor and was fitting. But I mean, I'm not saying it's tied to them, but it seems damn odd that happened after the incident. It's just strange. I can't prove that is part of what they did. But when he mentioned the head, or they were referring to the head, or it was to do with the head, I thought it was pretty damn strange. And also someone mentioned recently, do you think they put a chip in there? Well, I don't think so, because I think they're smarter than that. Why would they put it in an area that is so delicate, that is, you'd rather put it in your wrist or in your knee or somewhere, rather than, I think they're smart enough to know. So I don't know what they did.
Yeah. So why and when did you eventually become comfortable talking about it?
Yes, that's a marvelous point. It was when the subject was getting more popular, and then people say you were cashing in on it. But I'm anything but anything like that. I'm an honest man. It made me bolder, and it was when I'd seen some of the UFOs afterwards. I've never seen them again, thank God. I've never seen anything like that again, but I have seen the UFOs. And then we're not talking about pinpricks of light. These are over our heads. They're hanging. There were 3 of them. The way they appeared, the way they moved, they were not military. They're otherworldly. I won't go into detail about that. It would take up a few hours. But it's when I saw a triangular ship. Myself, I'd seen one of these things. I've only seen one. It was brief. It didn't, as I said, it didn't have sharp corners. They were rounded. It was thick set. It was about the size of 2 football field pitches in pure daylight, about 7:15 in August. That is what pushed me. I thought, we have to let the people know. I know others are doing that. I'm none the wiser than they are, but I think what it is very good to share ideas or to get them down on paper to try and educate people on what is going on, because something very strange is going on.
Yeah, yeah. We spoke off air about my experience, and we saw similar UFOs, but mine was a lot smaller than the one you saw. But you made the point about this thing was the size of 2 football fields. How come no one else saw it? And I get that a lot. I get people saying that it seems that they will show themselves to a particular person, and no one else can see it.
I have heard that, and also they can muffle the sound. And this came afterwards. I realised. I mean, it was audible then, but I realised, and of course, I said all the birds when this thing appeared. We have a lot of birds where we are in the trees. There was not one bird in the area, and it was like being contained in a bubble, a vacuum. There was no sound. This thing didn't make one sound, and I couldn't even hear. I realised that the children who were playing in the field, they must have seen it, but they didn't. No one saw it. So
Yeah.
I've only got myself. But I know, trust my eyes and ears. I'm not anything. I don't drink. It was in broad daylight. Didn't have any lights on it. It was like black tar. It was like everything was soundless. For that moment, it passed over, and it just glided the speed of a jet.
Yeah, yeah. I've spoken to several people in Phoenix the night of the Phoenix lights, and they say the same thing. It was just just an eerie feeling, but kind of exciting, and you just knew it wasn't of this world.
Yes, I kept remembering. There's a thought that passed my head as I was watching it. It looked so damn heavy. The thing looked like it was made of iron. It was black, but it looked so heavy. I kept thinking, all that was going through my head was, how on earth can it just hang like that? How can it, something so massive, something so incredibly huge, just hang as light as a feather? And it was afterwards I thought, if we had that technology, by God, we could perform some amazing things.
Yeah.
Some amazing. I don't think that, as I said, I don't think that was military. I'm not denouncing the military. They are very smart. They are very clever. But this thing was just too damn big. It was the size of more or less like a battleship.
Yeah.
The size of it, and it was thick set. It was so thick set.
Yeah. So you talk about your experience in the book Twin Souls.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
I wanted to ask you about the actual title, Twin Souls. Is that something to do with your brother, or does it have another meaning?
It is to do with my brother. It is to
Okay.
do with myself and my brother. That was the first one that came out by Capel Ban. And I don't think I've written any more about the UFOs, but I have done a revision of it in a new book coming out called The Digital Demon, that Philip Mantle is publishing, which goes into a lot more depth about my encounter with the doctors and the UFOs. I've also illustrated, for the first time, I've illustrated or tried to illustrate the doctors. I can remember what they were wearing. This up to here, they were like a gas mask, but down here I've elaborated because
Right.
I can't entirely remember what was down here,
Yeah.
but this bit certainly. And the horrifying hologram they showed me afterward, that's in there too. So yeah.
Yeah. So have you always had the ability to illustrate?
Yeah, I developed an interest in art when I was very young. I remembered at high school, I liked drawing, not UFOs then. I didn't have any interest in them. I didn't draw spaceships, but I was drawing characters and the like, and it just evolved from there. I loved humor as well, so I developed a taste for humor. These rich people that I created, these very wealthy, snobby people living in this big house, they're a big family. This was when I was younger. And, you know, Philip and I would write little stories to try and make each other laugh. So we'd write these stories about this rich family being very snobbish, just to make us laugh.
Mm-hmm.
It was very fascinating how this creative element started, because we just wanted to make each other laugh. This was long after the doctors. I put them to the back of my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a long time, I hadn't seen the UFOs. These started, I would think, in my 20s or 30s. But
Right.